Now, Adam Kadmon has to descend into the lower worlds, into what will become Atzilut and then even Bria. And so essentially what we're talking about now is Atzilut before the Shvira, and then the subsequent Atzilut of the world of Tikkun.
This is the second Shvira, right?
No, this is we're still in the first the first Shvira. We're still talking about the first Shvira. In other words, the first Adam Kadmon that we talked about in the world of Akudim, where there wasn't a real Shvira. Now what Rafi is referring to, the reason why Rafi asked that, is because we learned there's a subtle something amiss already in Akudim. That's a source of what will become the Shvira. So on some level, there was something that already happened on a very subtle level, but compared to this, that wasn't a Shvira. And that's this is a misa. This is considered like a death. That was considered like a whatever. Something went away, and it's not considered this kind of. The people who read this, they like to use the word a cataclysmic event. It's a big scary massive thing that happened here. So whatever happened that was some level of something not amiss is not as cataclysmic as this becomes. So
you're talking about something tangible now, or
no. All of this is metaphysical. All of these are cataclysmic is a word that but all the words that we're using are analogies. We're using the eyes, the ears. We don't mean any of them in any literal way, but we still use them as a mashal. So getting back to this kind of where was I just holding before the Akudim? Okay. So we're entering into the world of Nikudim, and we're going to reconfigure. I told you the Avsag Ma'aban as they apply in the world of Akudim. Now things are going to be different. One of the reasons why they're going to be different is because if you looked at the face, even though the nose, the nostrils are like points, but the eyes are like nikudot, they're like points. So the idea is that the eyes become important in the world of Akudim, Nikudim. It's not the same level of the light of the eyes that we talked about earlier when we learned about the world of Akudim. Because what happens is there are parallel spiritual universes. So we finish with the world of Akudim. There's some relationship with the light of the eyes of the world of Akudim and the light of the eyes of the world of Nikudim, but they're still separate. And therefore, the eyes is connected to Sag, 63. Why is it connected to Sag, 63? Because it's connected to Nikudim. What are Nikudim? 63. The eyes have an element of a Nikuda, of a point, so they're related to that. Also, they're related to Chachma, because the verse says, Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the congregation, that we're told that people like Moses and all the subsequent leaders are considered the eyes of the generation. What does it mean? It literally means they should look out to see what the needs are. They should meditate in a way where they see what people really need. But it really is a reference to wisdom. And then that means that the eyes are connected to Sag, which is wisdom. So again, that's the first Hey. There's a new configuration, the first Hey of God's name, which corresponds to 63, the Shem Sag, which corresponds to Chachma, which now corresponds in this configuration to the eyes. Not in Akudim. Akudim was a different thing. But in the world of Nikudim, it corresponds to the eyes. So there's going to be a new light that's going to go. Eyes, nose, mouth, or ears, nose, and mouth, that are going to come back up through the eyes and go down to the mustache. Yes.
I wonder if it would help to, to have diagrams to write it.
Yeah, I think it would, but because we're covering a lot of ground today, I'm not going to do that. But eventually, we could give out in the back of this one. There's pretty detailed diagrams, so we could eventually, maybe too detailed. Yeah, yeah. See, pictures. But there's quite a few. So this whole section is diagrams. So we will do that, God willing. Again, it may not be. It may be a little bit out there.
Can you show the camera?
But if you do this,
What?
Show the camera one.
Yeah. See here.
you can say if you do it,
Right.
Yeah. Well, that I don't know if I'll be able to. But here's another one, for example. This is one of the first things. Is what is a nakuda? Is a vowel? Is a mark that tells us how to read each letter, right? So there's 10. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 nakudot. There's actually 9, but okay, close enough. So we'll do the breakdown as follows. If you look here, and so this is going to actually be relevant to the world of Nikudim. You'll see why in a second. Let's just show you. So Nikudot, because again, the operating idea here is Tanta, which is Tamim, Nikudot, Tagin, and Otiot. Tamim is the cantillations, the Nikudot are the dots that help us vocalize the letters. The Tagin are the crowns, the Otiot are the letters themselves. So again, Tamim are related to Shem Sag, 63, to Chachma. And they're related to the world of Nikudim, because Nikudim are Nikudot. So it's the world of Chachma, the world of Nikudot. And if you look at it, we're going to go through them. So you have like this. You have the following 9 Nikudot. The Kamatz, Keter. Now, if you look at the kamatz, it's not a dot. It's a line and half a line underneath it. Okay? The patach, right? It's also a line. That's chachma, that's wisdom. Right? So we keep going.
Is there any reason that, or is that just the way they are reinterpreted?
You'll see.
Chachma versus making up.
You'll see in a moment the reason, somewhat of a reason in a moment for this. So the tseirei, 2 dots, they're like 2 yuds. That's bina. Right? So we keep going. The segel is chesed, the shva is gvura, right? The cholim is tiferet. The chirik is netzach. The shuruk is yisod. The kubutz is hod. And as we said before, malchus is the silent. It's the 10th, but there is no actual Nakuda underneath it. Now, you asked me a very good question, and I'm not going to say I know the answer, but yes, the answer is yes, there's a reason. I will say one little reason for Keter, Chachma versus Bina, Chesed, etc. This is the following. The Ari says this. The difference between Keter and Chachma is that they're not dots. All the other things have dots. Okay? Now, if you count all the dots of these, you have 1, 2, because you're only counting one letter. 3, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And if we're going to count one dot is like a letter yud. So yud is essentially a dot. You have 130. What is that the gematria of? Ayin. I. Right? The shvira, the breaking of the vessels, didn't happen in the upper 3. It happened in the lower 7. That's why these, if you were going to create the numerical equivalent, they would be Vav and Yud and Vav. 22. How did we get to 22? We did. 2 6s and a 10. That is the 22 letters of the Aleph base. So here's what the Ari says. The Ari essentially says that if you look at the Sfirot, what you'll find is that the higher Sfirot did not really break. They didn't have the full Shvira. They didn't have the full breaking in the vessels. And therefore, because they didn't have the full breaking of the vessels, they needed to have a vessel that could still continue to contain them. What are letters of the Aleph base? Containers, kalim, vessels. So the higher Sfirot, represented by Keter and Chachma here, because they didn't have the full Shvira, they needed to be represented by Chaf Beis Otiot. That's one reason. Another reason he says is because the Keter and Chachma had to create the vessels for those Sfirot that came